Everyone, hi, this is Christine Crowell here, and hope you're having a wonderful day so far. And I just want to really talk about this remarkable thing that's happening presently at the moment. It just seems as if America is really just going into itself, isolating itself from the rest of the world. And today's video, I'm going to be discussing with you about the dollar possibly collapsing. It's a warning. All the experts are saying this, so it's not just coming from what I am saying. This is from research and from doing my due diligence as well. And gold and silver is really the global shift in order to protect your wealth before it's too late. Now, this is really breaking news because the dollar is just hit a 50-year low. And I'm going to be blunt here, okay? There's going to be a high percentage of people that are not really looking at this aspect for whatever reason. Sometimes people, bury their heads in the sand, but this is something that we've got to be prepared for. I've been talking about being prepared from last year, from really September last year. I was saying about building a crisis fund, protecting your wealth. I've been talking about this because I could see July, August, September, I could see that things weren't as it should be. The signs were there, and obviously me being through 3 recessions, I've finally got the insight to be able to see the signs, to see when things are going wrong. It's took me like 3 recessions for me to actually, for the the light bulb moment to hit me. And this is quite a big situation that's happening. So tonight I'm going to be talking to you about how you can survive this financial storm. You can be the eagle and come out wealthier on the other side. So stay with me, stay tuned for some amazing information. But I really wanted to talk, before I go into my discussion with you, I just wanted to talk about the gold and silver, the market currently at the moment. I'm on the Kitco website, for example, and I'm looking at the live charts, and at the moment silver is $32.14, for example, and then gold is doing remarkable. It is at $3,236.90. It's going up and up and up. And yes, there's little dips going on, but it's moving up the ladder, for example. Now, gold is really the monetary system, for example, where you can trade gold in for money, for example. I mean, you can do the same for silver, but it's not as strong in that way, for example, as a legal tender. However, I believe that that's going to change because of majority of people buying silver, for example. So I'm going to go into the video, and I really want to share with you some really breaking news to help protect your wealth, for example. And we're seeing this unprecedented move currently at the moment where China, their retaliation and trade realignment away from the US. There's the gold derivatives that are imploding with, for example, 400 tons of physical gold being demanded from, for example, COMEX delivery, for example, even the New York reserves, Federal Reserves, for example, same with London, Lima. This really is creating the inventories to really plunge, to really go down. And with the BRICS raising, the US dollar declining in global trade. So I think a lot of people are kind of a bit, not I think, from what I can see, is that the global market really is wondering, do they really want to trade with the US? Because it can flop up and down. 1 minute it's this rate, 1 minute it's that rate, for example. So it's kind of leaving you feeling a bit unsecure. Just like if you had a relationship, for example, and that person was, up and down all the time, how would you feel? You wouldn't feel secure, would you? And, I lived in America. I've lived in the UK, for example, and I currently live in Cyprus, beautiful Cyprus. But if you're in a relationship like that, it just doesn't make you feel secure. So this possibly is happening with the global markets, for example. So tonight, what I'm going to be going through is to talk to you about some strategies that you can use to protect your cash and your metals. And I hope that you can hear me. Let me know that you're here and you're listening and you can hear me loud and clear. And I haven't had I can't hear you today, so that's good. So I will continue. So it's nice to see that a few of you are on, and I appreciate you being here as well. So thank you for that. So going back into what I was saying is that the crisis is unfolding. It's unfolding. There's a geopolitical risk of China retaliation, plus the BRICS strength as well. So let's start globally, okay? Now, China I'm just talking here, I'm not on any side, okay? I'm just talking about the facts and what I'm hearing and what I'm researching as well. So China isn't just cutting back on the US debt, they're leading a full-scale trade realignment. So they're retaliating economically by shifting their supply chains and forming stronger alliances through other nations, for example. And BRIC nations, for example. So they're building a system that bypasses the US dollar, for example. So China is buying record amounts of physical gold, and they have done for a number of years, for quite some time really. And they are also helping to develop alternative payment systems backed by commodities, especially gold and silver. This is key here. This is key here because we have got that opportunity as well by purchasing gold and silver, whatever it is that you can afford. I'm not saying to go out there, rush and just spend all your money, and you've got to plan it right and spend what you can afford, for example. So, like I said, they are really investing in gold and silver, and why shouldn't they? Because the price is really shot up, and even when we had the tariffs, which we still do have the tariffs at a certain percentage for the rest of the country, the rest of the states, the rest of the world, apart from China, for example, there still is a tariff on us, for example. So if you're looking at seeing this trend, type in BRICS in the chat, because I'd love to be able to do a video on this as well, because we need to really be aware of where we are and where do we go from here, for example. So let's talk about Fed money printing. US dollar is declining in the global trade. Meanwhile, at home, the Federal Reserve is devaluing the currency daily. So imagine, right, that there's an inflation going on, but here's the crucial global impact here, is that the US dollar, the dominance is actually falling in global trade. Now euro, because I live in Cyprus, for example, euro is stronger than the dollar. That's just one example, for example. So countries, like I said, are bypassing dollars in oil, gas and commodity deals because of the high tariffs, for example. So when this demand for dollar declines, your spending power also declines. It vanishes almost. You've noticed when you go to the supermarkets, when you go to the shops, you pay for things and you don't get as much as what you used to get, for example. So there's also this situation here. Let's look at bank failures, okay, the legal risk here. Now, let's not forget that banks, some of them are collapsing. Okay, and I'm not here to scaremonger or anything like that, but they are closing down, for example. Not many, but there are some closing down, for example. So signature banks gone, for example. And when you deposit money legally, it also becomes their assets. Now, I'm sure that we've all seen that there's a print, isn't there? There's a fine print that says, we can only protect so much of your money, say $100,000, for example. Okay? This is in case that there is a collapse, that they can't just pay everyone all of the money that they've got into the accounts. That's why a lot of people get properties, they put their money into properties, they put their money into stocks, they put their money into gold and silver and other assets as well, for example, and they also put them into different accounts and trust, and I could go on and on and on, really. So if this was in court, yeah, and you're lined up behind the bank's creditors, you'll have little chance of recovery here. So Basel III comes into play here too. Gold is now a tier 1 asset for banks, meaning banks trust gold over dollars. That's why the banks, everyone's trying to get gold and silver. And although I say I'm a lot on gold because I believe that I'm a lot on silver because I believe that silver is like the tortoise. Seriously, it is like the tortoise that I believe is going to win the race against the hare. Hare is the gold and silver is the tortoise. Okay? So, because everyone looks at gold because yes, it's doing really well, don't get me wrong, and it is going up really well as well in price on a daily basis, and silver is kind of dragging a bit, but it's going to get there. It really is, and this is why I'm doing this video. Okay, now gold, like I said, it is an asset classed as dollars, for example, over dollars, is stronger than dollars. So with China and BRICS, they know this. They are stacking gold at an unprecedented level, just like how America has requested their gold from the UK, for example, Lima to New York, Federal Reserve, for example. But then you see what's been happening is that a lot of banks, etc., they've been lending out their gold. They've been letting people use their gold for a period of time. But if that was to collapse, then that means all of that gold would not be yours. So that's why I always say it's good to have physical gold and silver. That is your best bet. Now, you can store it safely where you are, location wise, for example, because you don't want to be telling people that you hold gold and silver at home. For example, you hold it in a safe vault, for example, or a safe, for example. You can have home safes as well. Not saying that you have to pay for a vault and then you've got to pay monthly, for example, and then, you know, if you get into difficulty, then you don't want to be dealing with that, for example. So, like I said, China and BRICS, they know this, and gold is a derivative. It is imploding, okay? COMEX is stressed because now let's go even deeper into metal market itself. We are witnessing an implosion of gold massively, okay? Silver as well, but silver's not as explosive as what gold is currently at the moment. So visual, imagine this, right? COMEX, right? They have they've had a demand to send back 400 tons of gold. Over 400 tons of gold, of physical gold, are being demanded from markets like COMEX, for example, because people want their gold back. Paper gold promises are failing, and people want the real thing. So COMEX inventory is plummeting. Delivery demands are soaring. And you know what? They can't deliver it straight away. So you got to wait like 4 weeks or 8 weeks, for example, to get your gold. Your physical gold that you've got possibly with a storage. So silver is also part of this story as well, because COMEX silver inventories are at a multi-year low, as well as the Federal Reserves, as well as the Lima, as well as the New York Federal Reserves, for example. Everyone wants their gold and silver. They want it, and they want it today, because they know it's going to take a few weeks for it to be delivered. So they want to make sure that, you know, if we was to go into a bad situation, that they would have that ready to overcome any obstacles that may come their way, for example. So this is real, it's not a theory, and it is accelerating. So gold and silver has an edge, okay? So how can you get physical gold and silver? It's time to start. If you're not doing it already, it's time to start stacking gold and silver coins at the very minimum, for example. I'm not talking about bullions, because, you know, that's, if you can, then that's great, that's wonderful. But gold preserves wealth. Silver amplifies gains, and it is critical in industries for solar panels, electronics, but also it is starting to become acknowledged, even though it's undervalued. What silver can do is a lot more than what gold can do. So they're going to pivot and think And everyone knows that this is a very strong commodity, because without silver, we wouldn't have these computers, these iPhones, these solar panels, these renewable energy, these AI chips, the data centers, on and on and on, really, what silver can do. Electric vehicles, for example. So it is worth more than gold because of what it can actually achieve. It's not just like a factory thing, and that's it. Because when you look at the demand, it is outweighing. So the supply isn't enough. So yes, silver is going to become very, very strong, and I believe it's going to happen very soon. It is edging up there. It's edging up there. It's getting back to how things were perhaps before, the tariffs, for example. Okay, so right now, for example, central banks are buying gold. Smart individuals buy both gold and silver. Whatever ratio you decide to do is up to you, whatever it is you can afford. For example, look, back in 2007, I turned scrap gold and silver into real wealth. And I'm going to do a story on that because I think it's important for people to really understand how it works and what the step-by-step process was. And during that crisis, I slept well at night because I had real money in my hands, gold. Imagine you're doing like I was doing, me and my husband, who's now deceased, for example. We was doing gold parties. We were hosting gold parties, or we would go to people's homes and they would host the gold party, for example. And we would, at the end of the night, come out with bags of broken jewelry, gold, silver, broken earrings, chains, those type of things. Earring was missing, so they'd only have one earring, so yeah, that would go as part of old jewelry, for example. And what was so beautiful then is that we would look at what the spot price was at the time for this scrap gold and silver, for example, and then we would then offer 30% less than what it was spot, for example, because it was broken. It really didn't have a value to them because it was broken. The only value is what we were prepared to pay, for example. Now, imagine, after two to 3 months, we would go to a refinery and then we would get it smelted down, for example, into gold bars and silver bars. And also they would do the rounds as well. And what I think is amazing is that something like that just seemed too good to be true. I didn't realize the true value at the time of what we actually had in this type of scrap gold party, gold and silver party, for example, that we would hold on a monthly basis. But remember this, gold is like insurance. Silver is your accelerator. Now, what some people are doing is they are selling parts of their gold to buy silver because they feel that there's going to be a big change where silver is just going to shoot up. For example, once it gets to a certain level, that's when people are going to start let me sell some of my gold so I can get some silver in. But I'm doing it now, for example. So silver is like your accelerator, okay? Now, if you stack silver or gold? I'd love to see your comments in the chat. Do you stack silver currently at the moment? Is this something that you're currently stacking at the moment? Let me know if you are, because I'd love to know who's stackers, who we got here that are stackers, as well as those that are doing gold and silver, for example. Love to hear your comments here in the chat. That would be great. So I want you to really think about, if you are a stacker, like I said, do you stack gold, do you stack silver? Just comment in the chat. Let's look at the next part of the jigsaw puzzle, is that there are some loopholes for metals. So you can use some of this as a tax strategy to maximize your metals, for example. I've talked previously about metals IRA, for example, allowing you to hold both gold and silver in a tax deferred or tax-free account, for example. This is just you're stacking without handling the profits, handing over the profits to the taxman, for example. So few people realize that you can buy silver bullion in a IRA. So just do your research. One thing I'll say, I am not a financial advisor. I am just an ordinary woman who is nearly 60 that has brought gold and silver, well, all my life, but in terms of business-wise, since 2007, for example. And it's so amazing because you can put them into trust where it is protected for your family, for your legacy, for example, and it cannot be taken away from you, for example, if you put them into trust, for example. And it can be used then for things like, if you need to pay for additional care, for example, or maybe you want to go on a holiday, or maybe you want to have some extra pension money. There's lots of things that you can do to use gold and silver for example. So how do you hold trust? How do you hold metals, gold and silver, in a trust? So I'm going to talk to you a bit more about that, because another thing which I used to do wills and trusts for a law firm. I used to do lasting power of attorneys in the UK, for example. That's what I used to do. And I also used to work for a law firm in New York as well. And I was watching all of this. I saw all of this, and this law firm, it was in Broadway. So, of course, I would hear a lot about these types of things, for example. So, holding gold and silver in a legal trust, it really does shield you from lawsuits, creditors, estate taxes, government overreach as well. So, just imagine that you've got a asset protection. That is key, because at the end of the day, you can leave a legacy that is protected, and it's something that is always going to be needed, for example. And I will be doing some videos about this in greater detail, because as when I was doing will writing and trust and lasting power of attorneys, and sometimes we would put this into wills and things like that, I would have a solicitor obviously overlook what was being done, because I wasn't a solicitor. I was just a legal consultant, for example. So back to the gold and silver. think about this. It's a hedge with physical gold and silver. Number two, you can use this as a loophole, like precious metal, IRA for example. And number three, shield your metals inside a legal trust. So we're seeing so many things happen, like with the tariffs, for example. We're seeing also the stock markets dropping, etc. But if you check the gold and silver, I'll put the link here for the gold and silver charts, for example, you will see that gold and silver is standing the test of time. It is rising. It is not crashing, for example. It is rising. And I believe that it is going to explode. And when it explodes, it's going to become like rocket fuel. It's going to be like a rocket taking off. And this is the reason why I'm doing so many videos about this, because when I was talking last year, I was saying about creating an emergency fund. Buy silver coins. If you can't afford to buy gold coins or bullions, for example, then start off buying silver coins. Start off buying gold coins. For an ounce of gold, for example, is, you know, the 3,200 that I just mentioned to you. But you can buy a quarter of an ounce coin, gold coin, and I believe they're around about $800, for example. For an ounce of silver, a coin is 35. Well, not 35, it's 31 like I just said at the moment, but it could go up. But when you do purchase from organizations that deal, you know, that are dealers, for example, they will obviously put something on top of that, because obviously they have to make a profit, for example. But I just want you to all be aware that this is the time to really grow your stacking business, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, whether it's both. I would do both, for example, and this is something that you can do for your future 5-year plan, 10-year plan, for example. It can pay for many things, and I believe it's going to be like the new monetary system, i.e. gold, for example. I believe silver will come that way eventually, but you know, it's still trying to find its way, besides being industrial. So what I also want to say to you is there's a link here as well. You'll see it where you can purchase gold and silver by a reputable dealer. I'm going to put my link here, for example, and don't forget to grab your silver and gold stacker calculator in the description, and I will love to see you in the next video. I will be going live here tomorrow as well, because I'm going live daily here, and I just would love to hear your comments, because we're seeing this explosion here. The tariffs have really created this situation where people are thinking, hey, we need to rely on gold more. We need to rely on silver more, because that's going to give us that financial security. Because whilst things may seem like they're collapsing, we can overcome this by buying gold and silver, for example. And then that way you're protecting your loved ones, yourself, and the future as well. Some people, they've been saving up for years, and I take my hat off to you. I really do, because some of you have been doing this for probably 20 years, for example, I really do take my hat off to you, because you must be doing amazing. Because if you purchased, years ago, and you were spending, like, say, for example, $100, for example, for an ounce, and it's now worth $3,200 per ounce, that is such a good profitability. Just imagine. So this is the reason why I'm talking to you, to say, look, this is the time to really start looking at either gold, if you can afford it. If you can't, then get silver. Just buy a coin. Just buy a coin. Just like, a simple silver coin you can purchase for $35, for example. Start off small and buy one each month. You don't have to go, over the top and buy more than what you can afford, but buy what you can afford and build up and see it as a savings. Instead of, like, for example, maybe not have that meal or that takeaway and spend it on a coin. Say, no, this is my coin. I'm buying this coin instead of getting a takeaway. Or even if you go out for a meal or whatever, just say, no, I'm going to get myself a coin. I'm going to use that money and I'm going to get myself a coin. I'm not saying to deprive yourself of, social activities, but, just hold back a little bit, for example, and purchase some coins or whatever it is that you can afford. Because believe me, you won't regret it. Like I said, I'm not a financial advisor, and you should seek your own financial advice. I'm just talking to you as a person that has been there, been through 3 recessions. I say that this is the 4th, even though no one's really come out with it yet. I still believe that this is a recession that we're in, for example. It's being disguised in some way. No one's saying anything about it. But what I will say to you all is, by just buying one silver coin a month, and one, even if it's a quarter of an ounce gold coin, which is about $800, perhaps do that every 3 months, for example. Think about, look at the stacker, the calculator. I do have a video about how to use the stacker calculator, for example, and look at building your wealth that way, because only you can control that. Not the government, not the banks. You don't want to be, thinking, oh, I should have done this, when you start seeing the price go up for silver, which I believe it will, because imagine the silver mines, they've only got 20 years supply of silver. So the silver is being depleted globally. So unless they find a new mine, which that's going to take years to mine it anyway, but they need more silver than normal. It's being used more. And the reasons for this is because of AI, and because of the data centers, and because of the AI chips and the robots that they are creating. So that's creating more use. They're not asking for gold to be used in this way. So the electronic vehicles, by 2030, for example, everyone's got to have an electronic vehicle. That takes silver. The batteries take silver, for example. So even the watch batteries that we have take silver, for example. So there's lots of ways of getting silver, and I'm going to be going through how to start your own scrap gold and silver business, because that is another way of getting gold. And then you pay a refinery to smelt it down for you. Okay, so do stay tuned. If you've liked this video, do like the video. Hit subscribe if you've enjoyed what I've said today, and share it with a loved one or yourself. For example, listen, if you are looking at your pension, for example, start doing gold and silver. Start planning for that. Even when we get old, you know, and we may need to have care, for example, we don't know, for example, whether the care that we're being given, for example, whether we'll be eligible for it. You know, I've seen it when I was in America, for example. I've seen it where people have had to leave hospital because they've ran out of Medicaid, for example. You know, and I think it's quite sad that people have to leave because their insurance isn't covering this. You know, we don't know what the situation is. We don't know what the future is going to hold. But if we have some gold and silver, for example, even if it's paying for nursing care for a loved one, you know, you've got that silver there each month will pay for a loved one that needs nursing care, for example, or even home care, for example. Try and look at the value that gold and silver can do for you and your family, for example, in your future. Even purchasing a house, putting a deposit down on a house, even, you know, your pension. We don't know what the pension amount, whether we're going to get the full pension amount, whether that's going to be what we thought we would get. It could be less. It could be like a quarter less. So if you've got like gold and silver, that's your buffer that you can use each month to trade in as part of your buffer for your pension. You know, because we really don't know what's going to happen when it comes time for us to get our pension. And I think it's time for us to start looking at what we can do to protect ourselves. And this is why I'm doing these videos, because I know how it was when I was doing gold and silver, hosting gold and silver parties back in 2007, that it is a good, viable business. And I will do a video about that and talk to you about the step-by-step of what happened and how it was done, for example. So I hope that you've enjoyed the video for today, and I'd love to see your comments. Thank you for your subscribing to the channel. I really do appreciate that. I appreciate your likes. I also appreciate your comments. I will respond to your comments as well. You know, let's build wealth together. Let's stack together, for example, and let's really grow our wealth, because we've got to grow our wealth. We've got to leave a legacy. The big organizations are doing it. The family offices are doing it. The billionaires, the millionaires are doing this, as well as the governments are doing this, as well as the banks, and so on and so forth. So why should we not do it? We're entitled to. We can do this as well. So why should we not do that? It's time for us to really take this seriously and to build our wealth. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you found this helpful, and have a wonderful day. And I will be going live again tomorrow as well at 9 o'clock, and I look forward to speaking with you all then. Thank you so much for being here. Take care. Bye.